Good evening, dear students. So today we are going to start the topic, that is anatomy of flowering plants. First one, what is the meaning of this word anatomy? Study of internal structure of the living organisms. When we talk about the plant anatomy, when we discuss about the internal structure of the plant body, the complete structure of the plant body is divided into three regions: outermost, middle and inner. So if you see the internal structure of a plant body and observe in the microscope, it is divided into three regions, that is outermost ETS, the middle one is GTS and the inner one is VTS. If you take the internal structure of the living organism related with plants, the plant internal structure is divided into three regions: epidermal tissue system, ground tissue system and vascular tissue system. So many types of the many parts of the plant body we can observe inside the microscope in the form of epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, pith, medullary rays and vascular bundles, like that. So if we want to perfect about the internal structure or anatomy of the flowering plant, first we should be perfect about the plant tissues. So first we'll discuss about the plant tissues, then we'll discuss about the how the internal structure of the plant body will there. The plant tissues are broadly classified into two types. Based on which specific character, the plant tissues are classified into two types: power of cell division. Based on which character, the plant tissues are classified into two types based on power of cell division. The plant cell which have the ability to divide, and the plant cell which lost the capacity to divide. The plant cell which have the ability to divide, such a type of plant tissues are called as meristem. And the plant tissues which lost the capacity to divide, they are called as permanent. So here the plant tissues based on power of cell division, they are classified into two types. The first one is have the ability to divide, they are called as meristematic. The plant tissues which have the ability to divide, they are called as meristematic, and the plant tissues which lost the capacity to divide, they are called as what? Permanent. So here meristematic and permanent are given based on which specific character? Power of cell division. Have the ability to divide, meristematic. Lost the capacity to divide, that one is called as permanent. But now see here, the permanent tissues, I have used one word, they lost the capacity to divide. So completely they lost the capacity to divide? No. Certain conditions, like for example, during the process of secondary growth, when increase in thickness occurs in the dicot stem, when increase in thickness will occur in the dicot root. So in this certain condition, some of the permanent cells regain the capacity to divide. Once again they can divide. Okay. Now permanent tissues examples are parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, xylem and phloem. So in which sometimes they can be asked in the examination, which type of or which example of permanent tissues, once again they have the ability to divide So remember, generally the parenchyma cells have the ability to divide. If you take the example of dicot stem, so that is medullary rays, okay, then cortical cells, endodermal cells, and one more cell, but that is not made up of parenchyma, that is made up of collenchyma, that is hypodermis. So in the dicot stem, parenchyma cells regain the capacity to divide. Once again they can, the permanent cell once again can divide. The best examples are, that is medullary rays and endodermal cells and the cortical cells, okay. Whereas collenchyma tissue, which is present in the hypodermis of dicot stem, they also have the ability to divide during the process of secondary growth. Now, one more type of the question may be asked in the examination, based on which specific process once again the permanent cells can be divided. So remember, by the process of dedifferentiation. By the process of what? Dedifferentiation. That we will discuss also, okay. So here, the plant tissues based on power of cell division, they are classified into two types, that is meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. Simple definition, which can divide, meristem, which cannot divide, that is permanent, okay. Now come to the next one. So if we take this first specific type, that is meristematic. So what are the specific character of the meristem? One character already I have told you that can divide, except that the meristematic cells are nothing but they are immature cells. Meristematic cells are what? Immature cells, and they are undifferentiated cells. Meristematic cells are, that is immature cell, they are undifferentiated, their cell wall is thin, the cell wall is thin, and which is chemically made up of, the cell wall is made up of cellulose. Then the meristematic cells are maximum they are present on the growing regions. Maybe they are present at the tip or maybe present at the peripheral regions. And generally what we think that the vacuole is one of the specific character of the plant cell, right? But remember, due to immature in nature, the meristematic cells, we can use the word the vacuoles are absent if they are present very smaller in size. Except this character, some other extra characters also, there are gastric substances, then membrane bound organelles, these are also absent in meristematic tissues, okay. And they are having, that is dense protoplasm and with a prominent nuclei, that is also one line is given in the NCERT book. Now, we'll take the number one is what? That is meristematic. Number one is what? Meristematic. In which, see here, in which the meristems which have the ability to divide, they are produced early or late formation. The meristematic tissues, they are produced early in the plant or they will produce in the late form. So here we can use the word, actually the first word we have to take, the meristems are maybe promeristems. Meristems are maybe promeristems. Number one is promeristem, or which is also called as primordial meristem. The promeristem, or which is also called as what? That is primordial meristem. The promeristem is also called as what? Primordial meristem. What it means? I think you know that the cell division will occur in many, maybe from the zygotic cell or maybe from the some permanent cells also, right? So here, when the cell division will initiate or start, from the zygotic cell. When the zygote will undergo the cleavage process and when the cells will divide. So from the zygote, whatever the cell division will occur, such embryonic cells are called as, that is, promeristums. So here promeristums are related with what? Primordial meristems are related with what? That is embryonic cells. Embryonic cells. Now see here. So whatever the promeristem or whatever the embryonic cells are there, whatever that promeristem or primordial cells which are called as embryonic cell. So through that embryonic cells, as we know that when the seed will form. So here, when a farmer is sow the seeds into the field, the farmer will sow the seed into the field. So the seed contain, that is, radicle and plumule. And I think you know that the radicle and plumule, the radicle gives rise to root tip and plumule gives rise to what? Shoot tip. So please concentrate. So here the promeristums that gives rise to, that is, a root apical meristem. Okay, or we can use one more word, that apical word we will take later. So here the promeristem is present at the tip of root. And they are also present at the tip of stem, that is tip of stem. So here this promeristem may be present at the tip of root, may be present at the tip of stem. Now, based on location, concentrate. Based on location, the meristematic tissues are, based on location, the meristematic tissues are classified into three types. Number one is apical meristem. Number two is intercalary meristem. And number third one is lateral meristem. So here, based on what? Position or location, the meristems are classified into three types: apical meristem, intercalary meristem, and the lateral meristem. So see here, the promeristem that are present at the tip of root, they are present at the tip of stem. So together remember one point. So tip of root, tip of stem are nothing but the meristems are gives rise to the primordial meristem that gives rise to, combined together I am taking one word, primary meristems. So here the promeristem that gives rise to primary meristem and the primary meristem that gives rise to may be apical, and the primary meristem that gives rise to intercalary. How many words I have written on the board? 3. Based on position, apical, intercalary. So one more is left, that is lateral. So see here, promeristem is one, and second one is that late formation of the meristems are secondary meristem. So the third word, that lateral meristem based on position, will comes under in what? That is in the form of secondary. Lateral meristem. So finally what we are getting? Based on position, they are of three types, that is apical, intercalary, and the lateral. Now see here one by one. Tip, promeristem located at the tip of root and tip of stem. So now in that, see here, the apical meristem present at the tip of root and stem. See here, the apical meristem is related with present at the tip of root and stem. They are called as RAM and SAM. What? That is root apical meristem and shoot apical meristem. The primary meristem that gives rise to apical and apical meristem which are present at the tip of root and stem, they are considered as RAM and SAM. That is root apical meristem and shoot apical meristem. Whereas the primary meristem also gives rise to what? Intercalary meristem. But based on position, apical present at tip of root and shoot. Intercalary meristems are present at the nodes, internodes, petiole, and we can take some other characters also, okay, etc. So here intercalary meristems are present at the nodes, internodes, or we can take one more word, that is petiole. Now concentrate. The apical meristem present at the tip of root and stem is mainly responsible for what? Primary growth. Primary growth. And intercalary meristem which is present at the nodes, internodes, petiole, they are also responsible for what? Primary growth. But one word you should remember for the examination, what? The apical is related with dicot, growth of the primary growth in dicot. But this word intercalary is purely related with the monocot. According to NCERT line, elongation of the grass or elongation of the sugarcane or continuous elongation of the bamboo shoots, that is purely related with the presence of intercalary meristem. So intercalary meristem present at the nodes, internodes, petiole, that helps in primary growth in monocots. So primary growth in monocots. So the best example, which is the best example for this primary growth in the monocots, that is elongation, continuous elongation of bamboo shoots, grasses, sugarcane. So in this monocot, this continuous elongation will occur due to the presence of intercalary meristem. Okay. So now once again, primary growth, location is different. This is intercalary, this is apical. Both of them combined together, primary. And this primary will come under in what? That is one type of promeristem. Now we'll come to next one is what? Lateral meristem. Lateral is also based on position, third type, that is lateral meristem. Right? Now see here. Late formation of the tissue, that is meristems, are secondary. Based on location, lateral. So see here, the lateral meristems are present at the periphery. Lateral meristem are present at the periphery of root and stem. Same point. Tip of root and stem, here periphery of root and stem. So lateral meristem present at the periphery of root and stem, it helps in secondary growth. Okay, so what is the function of the apical and intercalary meristem? Primary growth and primary growth in monocots, right? Whereas lateral meristem helps in secondary growth in dicots. What I have used the word dicot. It means the lateral meristem we cannot observe in monocots. Okay, we cannot observe in monocots. I think if you take the example of monocot, the coconut tree. So coconut is monocot. So sometimes we can think that, sir, monocot, coconut is a monocot, but we are observing the secondary growth in that stem. So please always remember, the secondary growth which is occur in that monocot, that is not the normal growth. That one is called as abnormal growth, abnormal secondary growth. And abnormal secondary growth is called as anomalous. Once again, listen here, anomalous secondary growth. So anomalous secondary growth are nothing but what? Abnormal secondary growth. So in monocots, if you are observing the secondary growth, like in the date palm or in the coconut, you should remember that is called as abnormal secondary growth. And abnormal secondary growth are called as what? Anomalous. Okay, now see here. So secondary or lateral meristem that helps in, that present at the periphery of root and stem, and it helps in what? Secondary growth. Now, what are the examples? What are the examples are there which helps in secondary growth in dicot? What are the examples are there that helps in secondary growth? So here, some of the specific meristems are needed. Some of the specific secondary or lateral meristems are needed for secondary growth in dicot. The best examples are vascular cambium and cork cambium. So vascular cambium and cork cambium are the examples of what? Secondary meristem or lateral meristem. Okay. And one more character, I think you know that. Sometime we can use one more word for this cork cambium. The cork cambium is also called as phellogen. The cork cambium is also called as what? Phellogen. Okay. So now see here. I have used one word, that is early formation of the meristems are, that is promeristem, or early formation of the meristems are called as primary meristem, right? But in which, see here, this secondary meristem will produces only during the process of secondary growth. But before few minutes I have used one word, that is the meristems are, the tissues are of two types. Tissues are of what? Two types. Which are those? That is meristematic. And number one is what? Permanent. So see on the board that the meristematic tissues are immature. The meristematic tissues are immature. When the meristematic cells becomes mature, they are called as permanent tissues. Means permanent tissues are not the separate one. The permanent cells are produced from what? Meristem only. When they becomes mature. So see here. So meristems are immature. When they becomes mature, they differentiate and they forms the permanent tissues. They form the permanent tissues. Right? Now, what are the characteristic features of the permanent tissues? Okay. What are the characteristic features of the permanent tissues? So, mature cell, differentiated cells, cell wall is maybe thin or thick. If you take the example of parenchyma, the cell wall is thin, and if you take the example of sclerenchyma, that is a thick, and the permanent tissues are maybe living or dead. The parenchyma are living, whereas sclerenchyma are what? Dead. Then a well development of vacuole. And one more is, we have studied the prominent nucleus with a dense protoplasm. But in the permanent tissues, if you take the example of parenchyma, same property is there, that is the dense protoplasm with a vacuole, right? Dense protoplasm with a vacuole. But dense protoplasm and small vacuole. But whereas in the permanent tissues, a large vacuole is there with a dense protoplasm. Right? So this is about what? Some of the difference between meristematic and permanent. Now one more point. Here, meristematic tissues may be primary, may be secondary, right? Based on origin. Now, based on position, apical, intercalary, lateral. Now, what I'm saying, what I want to explain to you, when meristem becomes permanent, means when immature becomes mature. Based on that, we can take one more statement. What? See here. One more statement we can take. What we can take? Based on functions, the meristems are of three types. Based on functions. When the meristem which are immature, they becomes into permanent, means they becomes into mature, they becomes into permanent. That time they are classified into three types, that is protoderm. Then number 2 is ground, and number third one is that is procambium. Procambium. So protoderm, ground and procambium are the three types of meristem based on their functions. So based on their functions there are three types of meristem: protoderm, ground, procambium. So in the beginning of the class I have told to you that when we take a thin section of root, stem or leaf and observe in the microscope, what I have explained to you that they gives rise to three regions: outer, the middle and the inner, right? So please see on the board. The protoderm meristem, when they becomes permanent, protoderm is meristem, immature. When they becomes mature by the process of differentiation, so now they give rise to epidermal tissue system parts. Epidermal tissue system parts will provide by which meristem? Protoderm meristem, right? So based on function is classified. So protoderm gives rise to ETS. ETS, the best example is epidermis. So this epidermis part is originate from which meristem? Protoderm. Epidermis comes under in which system? ETS. What is the function of epidermis? That gives rise to protection. That gives rise to what? Protection. Number 2. The ground meristem immature. When they becomes mature, when they becomes permanent, they give rise to GTS. That is ground tissue system. Now, if you take the example of cortex, there are many parts will come, that is cortex, endodermis, pericycle, pith, medullary rays. But when the GTS that gives rise to, the best example is cortex, it helps in, if they are loosely arranged with intercellular spaces, they helps in exchange of gases. And cortex also helps in, that is a storage. And some of the cortical cells contain the chloroplast, they helps in photosynthesis. So what we are getting? Based on function, ground meristem gives rise to GTS. Like example is cortex. Cortex helps in respiration, storage, photosynthesis. Now third one is what? Procambium meristem, third type. Based on function, third type, that is procambium. So procambium gives rise to what? That is VTS, vascular tissue system. So here procambium gives rise to vascular tissue system. So which parts will comes under in? Which permanent cell comes under in VTS? That is xylem and phloem. So xylem and phloem comes under in what? That is vascular tissue system. So xylem, phloem comes under in VTS. VTS is permanent, which comes from which meristem? Procambium, and is one type of based on function. And so function is what? So xylem and phloem that helps in conduction of water and food. So this is about the brief introduction about what? First type of meristem, first type of plant tissues, that is meristem. So what I have explained to you, the characteristic features of meristem. Then they are types based on origin, primary, secondary. Then based on their origin, 3 I have told to you: apical, intercalary, lateral. And 3 based on their functions: protoderm, ground and procambium, right? So this is about brief introduction about first type of plant tissues, that is meristematic. In the next class, we'll discuss about the second type of plant tissues, that is permanent tissues. Okay, thank you.